Last week, we looked at beta and how it can be used to help select investments. Today, we are looking at alpha and how you can use it to help pick good funds to invest in. Stick around until the end because I've got an important warning to consider when using alpha. Let's get started. Alpha is used to measure performance on a risk-adjusted basis. What does this mean? Let's look at an example. You have two funds, Fund 1 and Fund 2. The goal of both funds is to beat the S&P 500, and both of those funds are taking similar investment risks. Fund 1 has an alpha of 2.5, and Fund 2 has an alpha of -1. Let's imagine that the S&P 500 returned 10% this past year. The S&P 500 would have an alpha of 0, since it is the benchmark. 0 is considered the baseline with alpha. Since Fund 1 has a positive alpha, we know that it has a return greater than the 10% that the S&P 500 returned. Fund 1 had a return of 12.5%. That 2.5% greater than the S&P 500, that is the alpha created by the fund. Meanwhile, Fund 2 returned 9%. Not a bad return, but since the S&P 500 returned 10% and had similar risks, the alpha generated was actually negative, meaning you could have invested in the benchmark, taking a similar amount of investment risk, and returned more. You may have seen a website called Seeking Alpha. This is the premise behind the name. If you generate alpha in your portfolio, it means you are generating more returns for a similar amount of risk. The warning I mentioned at the beginning of the video is tied to this concept of risk. You shouldn't really compare the alpha of two different types of funds, because they are each tied to their own respective benchmarks. So, for example, you shouldn't compare the alpha of a bond fund to the alpha of a growth stock fund. Comparing these two would offer very little useful information. You want to compare funds that are taking similar types of risk. Then alpha helps. But if two different funds have two different risk profiles, then alpha should not be used to compare to help with investment decisions. If you have any questions about the world of investing, any suggestions on videos, please post in the comments below, and please subscribe as we continue to update with new videos every week. Thank you.